Hey everyone, welcome back to Ragtag Stacking. In today's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about two separate topics actually. We've been seeing them pop up recently. One is the inflation rate in December last month that went up to 7%, which pushed it up to a 40-year high. And the second topic that I'm going to be talking about is kind of related to that, is why gold and silver haven't soared. Why haven't they taken off with inflation reaching all these record highs? Why has gold and silver kind of stayed fairly put? And I came across two articles that go in depth, one obviously on each topic. I'm fairly new to stacking gold and silver, so anything that I come across that can help me out on things that it's not a blind spot, but it's just something that I haven't come across too much, as opposed to someone where it's their job to know what's going on with trends and market analysis and things like that. So like I said, there are two articles that I'd like to touch on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump onto the computer and get into them. Okay, so this is the article here. It is on kitco.com, and the title is "Inflation is now at 7%, the highest in 40 years, and will stay until 2024. Now that is obviously a prediction made by this Steve Hanke, and in the article here it's going to go on into why he thinks that. So getting right into that prediction by Steve Hanke, professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University. I always associate Johns Hopkins with their medical and their lacrosse program. Told David Lin, anchor for Kitco News, that inflation will likely remain elevated until 2024, after which the Federal Reserve will have to focus on reducing the money supply. And getting into some of the reasons why he thinks this will happen, says, contrary to what politicians have been claiming, inflation is not caused by bottlenecks in the supply chain, but rather by increases in the money supply, Hanke said. I'm sure it's both. I'm sure that the bottlenecks aren't helping with the inflation. But I don't agree with people saying that inflation is only being caused by the bottlenecks in the supply chain. But I do think that two things can be possible, and especially with two things affecting inflation, it tends to make sense that it will be going higher if there's more factors and more catalysts that are driving it higher. And going forward, it says, higher interest rates alone will not be enough to combat inflation, as interest rates don't directly affect the level of money supply, Hanke said. The government will have to make a concerted effort to lower the M2 money stock. I don't know why that's likely to be after 2024. I don't know enough of what he's talking about to say, why can't this happen before 2023, being this year. I really don't know why he's saying that it will be way down the road before they address this stuff. I mean, judging by past history and their track record, it might take that long for them to do anything about a problem. But it just seems kind of arbitrary to go with this 2024 or later. It says likely to do it after, because they're not really giving he's not really giving reasons why it won't really happen in 2022 or 2023. It says the major risk this year is that should interest rates rise too high too soon, the Fed could cause stagflation and put the economy back into a recession. So this was the Kitco article that was talking about the inflation number there. Obviously, it climbed 7% in December, which was that 40-year high, the highest since 1982. And I have heard a lot of people, and I've seen some videos talking about, why gold and silver have not kept up with the way inflation has. So this is the second article that I wanted to touch on here. Obviously, the first one was talking about the inflation level being at a 40-year high, and this one is talking about why precious metals aren't soaring yet, why it really hasn't kept up with inflation. So getting down here, it says precious metals haven't done much lately, which is puzzling. Now, the last couple of days we've seen it go up a bit, but it hasn't gone up to like 50 or anything like that, where people are expecting or wanting it to go, or a lot of people are thinking or hoping that it will shoot the moon, and it clearly has not done that yet. Obviously, silver and gold. I use silver for that example, but both silver and gold have kind of just been standing pat. There hasn't been too much movement either way on both of the precious metals. Geopolitical risks are rising, with Russia and China threatening conflicts with Ukraine and Taiwan. Plus, inflation is at the highest in 40%, like I touched on in the previous article. And there's a lot of uncertainty about where the economy is headed. And getting into some of the reasons why precious metals and precious metal stocks have been fairly flat lately, as he put it. And it's inflation, deflation, stagflation. It says there are different environments that the economy can experience. Job levels, wages, consumer prices, and interest rates all indicate which stage the economy is currently in and what could come next. It says when the Federal Reserve goes on a spending spree after a crisis, what happens next is inflation and a devalued US dollar. And it says at this point, precious metals typically start to outperform. It says we saw this in the dot-com bust in the early 2000s after the Great Recession in 2009, and most recently we've seen it with everything that was going on in March 2020. The crash that we saw there. We didn't see it down for long, but obviously it did, spike down that little bit. And if you were buying precious metals, physical precious metals at that time, you know that even though it dipped down quite a bit, the premiums did not move with it. And we've kind of been in the high premium era ever since that crash dip in March 2022. The price of silver hasn't hit a new high since February 2021. Almost a year ago, obviously, and gold is even longer. It's been way back until August 2020 since we've seen a new high for gold. And saying what gives? Well, it's all about the US dollar. With inflation rising, the US dollar is rising too. The Federal Reserve is pulling back its monetary policy, which reduces overall US dollars in the global economy. So investors, especially those overseas, see the dollar as more attractive versus their own country's currency. So basically, if there's less supply and high demand, prices will rise. When they're analyzing currencies, it's all about the relative value of one versus the other. Which currency has a higher interest rate, and what are the expectations going forward for each country? So it says gold and silver are no exception to this rule. I'll outline three important currency pairs with the US dollar. We'll see the Australian dollar, the British pound, and the euro. Lining them up so you can see how similar they are to the setup in precious metals. Here's a price chart for the Australian dollar. We can see that February 2021 was the high, just like for silver. And then going down here, it says for the British pound, June 2021 was the high. So that's a little bit later, but you can see that the trend line is still kind of following what silver's been doing. And lastly, the euro here, you can see it was just before that recent high for silver in February of 2021. The euro hit its high in January of 2021. And then here's that visual representation of the August 2020 high for gold and that February 2021 high for silver. It says the evidence is clear. Price action across the major currencies, along with gold and silver, is reacting to the strength of the US dollar. It doesn't matter that inflation is elevated on a relative basis around the world. Dollars are in high demand versus other currencies, and precious metals are in this basket too. And going on how he still likes the long-term setup in gold and silver. It says from March 2022, the low, says both gold and silver and other major currencies are still in an uptrend, technically speaking, but we have to be patient. So I get that be patient part. If you are one of the people that are wanting to see, gold and silver go to the moon, then take this opportunity while it's, on sale by your eyes, because you're wanting it to get to a certain point and you're expecting it to get to a certain point. So why not take advantage of the lower prices now? We saw what, impatience can lead to. We saw the people on Wall Street silver trying to mimic and have the same thing happen with silver that happened with, those meme stops like GameStop and all that stuff. And we saw, it moved the price a little bit, not too much. It went right back down after it, spiked up that small amount. But again, that accompanied more higher premiums, with that attempted short squeeze. We were just almost out of that. I wouldn't say almost out of it, but the premiums, that we saw, they got really, really high in 2020 in the spring. And then towards the end of the year, it started to, dissipate a bit. We were getting a little bit more of a break on the premiums. And then January 2021 came around, and then all that short squeeze stuff, and we're right back into the extremely high premiums on silver. And so yeah, I'm kind of sick of it, you know, the seeing those premiums still being as high as they are, because I am still in accumulation mode. I do want to pick up as much as I can, but with some of these prices, it's just ridiculous to be, you know, grabbing it at this time with the amount of premiums that are tacked on. So I 100% agree with the, you know, being patient. You know, silver doesn't need to be at 100 overnight. Gold doesn't need to get to 10,000 overnight. You know, it's a slow and steady thing, especially for stackers. I don't know why anyone who's still currently stacking and wanting to pick up metals is hoping for it to go, you know, parabolic to the moon, because that will greatly, you know, reduce the amount of silver and gold you'll be able to pick up, because you're going to be pricing yourself out of your budget. But yeah, don't get me wrong, obviously in 20 years I would like to see, you know, silver up at 200 or whatever, but I would like for it to take that long. I'd like for it to be a gradual growth, so we don't see any of those huge spikes and then the huge dips, but then we're left with, you know, a year plus worth of these, you know, extremely high premiums. That seemed to unsettle the market quite a bit in 2021. But anyways, that was the end of this article here. I will leave a link in the description to both the Kitco article that was talking about the inflation rate being at a 40-year high, and then this one here from Daily Wealth on why the precious metals aren't keeping up with what inflation's doing. So there you go. Those are the two articles that I want to talk about. I've done articles talking about the inflation before, a lot of them last year, just because it kept pushing up and, you know, reaching those new heights and record heights. But not a lot was talked about the performance of silver and gold, or at least I didn't see too many articles touching on why silver and gold, you know, kind of been lagging behind. But recently, getting into 2022 with the new year, I have seen more and more articles discussing why silver and gold have kind of been, I don't know, lackluster. That might not be the right term, but a lot of people have been wishing and hoping for big things with their gold and silver, and it's kind of, you know, sort of fallen flat of their expectations. So I thought this was a pretty good article to try to explain why that is, you know, some of the factors that are causing it. And like I said, anytime I come across these articles, I do like making videos on them. But yes, I'd like to hear from you guys, what you guys think. Like I said at the end of the last article there, I'm not really too disappointed with the way that silver and gold have been performing. I don't care for the premiums that have been tacked on and still there with silver. That's making a lot of what I'd like to buy. You know, I've kind of been off to the sidelines because it doesn't make sense paying that premium. And like I've said before, I'm fine with silver and gold kind of staying at this level and, you know, not spiking up too high or, you know, dipping down too low. But obviously, I'd be crazy if I said in 10 years I'd like to see silver at, you know, $10 an ounce. That doesn't make sense. In 10 years, sure, I wouldn't mind seeing it at that $50 mark, but just not overnight. But I do know, seeing from some of the comments I've gotten on previous videos, that there are plenty of people that are no longer in accumulation mode. They're in trying to get as much out of their stack as possible. And for those that have been stacking for decades and have, you know, some might have a dollar cost average that is in single digits. So for them to get to 30 or 35, $40, whatever it is, they're making a nice tidy profit. And, you know, if it gets up to 50 or 100 or to the moon, like a lot of people are saying, then they're going to be making quite a bit of money off of their stack. As I said, down the road, I'd love to be in that position, but right now I need to build up my stack. It's not anywhere near where I'd like it to be. And obviously, with that being the case, I'd like it to be still attainable for a decent price. So I'm fine with the price of silver not shooting up, like I said, overnight. But anyways, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back for the next one. Thank you.